Hello and welcome to the Best of France 24 Reports, the show that brings together the week's most memorable stories from our correspondents around the world. In this edition, we'll take you to Karachi, crime capital of the world. In Pakistan, a disagreement between friends ends all too often in murder. Then off to Beijing, where residents are scrambling for breathing masks and air purifiers. Pollution levels are 30 times higher than standards set by the World Health Organization. But first, on top of the economic crisis, Spanish leaders must now wade through a political one. The daily newspaper El País says it has documents that show Mariano Rajoy and his Popular Party organized a vast corruption scheme from 1990 to 2008. Every evening, protesters gather outside party headquarters demanding Prime Minister Rajoy step down. Adeline Percept and Clément Perrault have more.
For more than a week now, anti-riot police have stood guard at the headquarters of the ruling People's Party. Every evening they set up barricades and prepare for protesters angered over allegations of corruption by politicians here. The newspaper El País published what it said was a secret set of accounts. For years it claimed those running the Spanish Conservatives received cash in envelopes on top of their salaries, including current Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy.
I don't think there's another party in Europe that's done what these people have done. Our country is supposed to be democratic, and they've stolen from us.
The documents also implicate large construction companies in the illegal financing of the party. The scandal turns the spotlight once again on the excesses of the country's housing boom.
It's because of this corruption that Spain's ended up in the state it's in. Our fictitious economic model was based on bribes in the construction industry. What was presented to us as development was just a mafia operation.
This case is just the latest corruption scandal of the last few years. We're in Cesena, a ghost town like many others in Spain. The former socialist mayor is under investigation for backhanders. These blocks were thrown up after planning permission was granted in record time. Manuel Fuentes was one of the first local councillors to criticise the running of planning departments.
The speculators put pressure on a certain number of mayors to get lands reclassified. Land which was cheap was reclassified for building. You see this land behind me? Plots that were worth nothing, 12 euros a square meter, and I'm not exaggerating, ended up as much as 50 or 60,000 euros.
Cases like these have made Spaniards indignant. The citizens' webpage change.org has collected hundreds of thousands of signatures calling for Rajoy to resign.
In the first 12 hours, 300,000 people signed our petition. After 4 days, we had 800,000.
For the moment, despite the historic pressure on him from the opposition, the Spanish premier has no intention of stepping down. He says he's innocent of the accusations against him.
If people think that because of this harassment, I'm going to withdraw from or give up the task that Spaniards have trusted me with, that person is very much mistaken.
In Madrid, the civic movement The Indignados hopes people will unite against corruption. They hold daily outdoor meetings to discuss the issue. With officers carrying out constant identity checks, there's an increasingly tense atmosphere.
It's got the highest number of homicides per capita in the world. In Karachi, Pakistan's economic hub, there's one weapon for every 4 residents. Young men often receive handguns as gifts to protect themselves as they enter adulthood, with tragic consequences. Julien Fouché, Taha Siddiqui.
Outside his own home, 20-year-old Shahzeb was killed by his 17-year-old neighbor. His father says the deadly argument between the young men started over a girl. They killed him here in this street? The calm of this rich neighborhood was shattered by the sounds of bullets that night. A few hundred meters from here, we meet 2 youngsters from Shahzeb's social circle. students at a local university. Abdul Muiz and his friends are armed with automatic pistols. For them, guns have always been a natural part of growing up in Karachi.
As jewelry is something very important to a woman, so for men the jewelry is a gun. It is, what do you call it?
Independence. Like you don't depend on anyone. You're free. You can use your gun. You can protect yourself. If someone comes robs you, you can just either fire at them or something like that.
The same night, 17 people were killed in Karachi. Such violence has become routine now. And with more youngsters being armed every day, the menace of weaponization of Karachi is spiraling out of control. More than 3 million weapons reign supreme in this city, leading to armed clashes, and universities are becoming a hotbed of this violence. Last June, Arshad's university was surrounded by armed youth who shot at the students inside.
Here are bullet holes in the window. They fired submachine guns, killing Fida, a friend studying here. That's where we were being fired upon by a rival political students' body known as APMSO. The killers had access to these buildings and they were shooting at us from there.
Arshad survived that day, but was targeted again a few months later. He denies carrying any arms himself. However, police officials say incidents of firing at such universities are rarely one-sided.
In just the last 2 years, more than 10 or 12 students have been killed who belong to our community. The way Karachi's law and order is, I don't think anyone can live in this city. Many of the students have even quit the university after their parents forced them to leave because of the violence.
To counter the gun culture, authorities at such universities have asked paramilitary forces to intervene. The entrances are heavily guarded, and the security personnel have been instructed to check every student entering these educational institutes.
The problem is at the national level. The political parties at the national level, how they are training their youth. They have the only one training: tires, gun, sticks, and other activities.
Karachi features at the top of the list of cities with the highest homicide rates in the world, and political violence here has claimed over 5,000 lives in the last 5 years alone.
The fog present in and around Beijing for the last month is no natural phenomenon. Several million Chinese residents breathe air dirty with the fumes from a growing number of cars, as well as toxic factories nearby. The Chinese government has announced a large-scale plan to fight pollution. The first plan, back in 2008, failed. Baptiste Favelos, Zhao Wenwu, and Shannon Van Sant have more.
Last Thursday in Beijing, the city woke to a thick fog for the third day in a row. People wore air-filtering face masks, and environmental activists like Xiao Nang were hard at work. Xiao is with the local NGO Green Beagle, which monitors levels of fine particles in the air.
Today we have 360 micrograms of fine particles per cubic meter. According to international standards, it's hazardous. According to Chinese standards, it's heavily polluted.
This unsafe air is caused in part by the 5 million cars that pass through the huge arteries of the city. There will be 200,000 more cars in 2013, and that's just one of the challenges facing Beijing.
There are also the industries, which account for around 20% of the pollution, and also the construction sites and the coal burning in people's homes. This is a combination of pollutants. Beijing closed some polluting factories in the last decade. But the air pollution doesn't come only from the city itself. It also comes from the cities around it.
We've driven 180 kilometers outside the city to Hebei province. When wind dies down, Tangshan looks like a disaster scene. Chinese authorities relocated several factories here that closed before the Olympic Games. And as in other parts of China, the main cause of pollution is quickly identified: coal. It heats the homes, fuels steel factories, and feeds the huge electric power plant. And it has become a nightmare for local people.
You can't even open your eyes. You have to cover them if you want to walk down the street. The black ashes stick to your teeth. It's all black and thick.
This ash contains lead, mercury, and arsenic. When it is not emitted by chimneys, it's stockpiled outdoors near villages. And as soon as winds rise, it infiltrates the homes.
Look, I just boiled water at noon, and the bowl became like this.
No serious medical study is available here, but villagers talk about unexplained diseases and high rates of lung cancer. The level of fine particles appears record-breaking.
Here we have 810 micrograms per cubic meter. We are by far beyond any index.
Do you think this pollution will affect the air in Beijing?
Yes, this place is not so far. When there is wind blowing to the north, some of this pollution will move to Beijing.
Despite green energy government investments, China is still addicted to coal, an abundant and cheap resource. Even a few hundred meters from the power plants, villagers use coal to keep warm, the same coal they blame for slowly killing them.
That's the end of this edition of the Best of France 24 reports. Thanks for watching. More news coming up on France 24.